I'm Jimmy Bach. This is History with Jimmy, along with my producer Chandler Holmes, and this is episode 20. So this is a book that Cheryl has at the library downstairs, and it's a book for everybody to read. And a fellow by the name Ted Fanstemacher wrote a lot of different stories over the years, and this is one of his books. It's called More Tracking Yesterday. So I thought it was very interesting to bring it up at one of our episodes because of the different stories that he has in here. And just to give you an example, one of them is how Benton got a dam. There's another one about how a cemetery was moved. There's ones about Old Drum and Bugle Corps. So there's many different stories in here. It's a worthwhile book. I encourage you to come to the library, see Cheryl, and get this particular book. So, what we're going to be talking about now is Murder and Mystery in Mocanaqua from 1932. I'm going to show you a baseball card, and this baseball card is from the West End Coal Company, who had a baseball team. And we have a bigger picture of it. This is a postcard that we sell for $5, and the gentleman that's in the center was a one-eyed pitcher, we were told. So that was very unusual to have that. So, but you can get this postcard. I think it's $5. I don't know that we have the names of the people there. There might be somebody that gets one of these cards that can help us out and say, hey, this is so-and-so. So that would be very helpful. So here we go. 1932, murder haunts family. I'm a little hard on speaking Italian. Then Lidio Maroli's grandchildren wanted to solve the mystery of her death. And this was something that was published in the paper, and they came to the Historical Society. Frank was here, Chandler and I, and we tried to help them because they were trying to find out what happened to her. So it starts out, what was described by some bypassers as a pile of rags in the Susquehanna River in 1932 became the start of an ongoing mystery that still haunts a family and some residents of Shickshinny. The bundle turned out to be the body of Mrs. Mori, a 38-year-old Italian beauty, rumored to be romantically involved with the local mafia head. And there was no doubt that she had been murdered. According to her death certificate, her neck had been broken, but there was no water in her lungs, according to W.W. Waters, who did the autopsy. That indicated that she was dead before she went to the water. Burke Enterprise newspaper report from the time said her nose appeared to have been broken, and the Scranton Republican said she also had a gash on her leg. But despite intense media coverage, her murder was never caught. Now, two of her grandchildren, Alex Mori, Angela Mori, Tracy, trying to find out who killed her, and are hoping the public can help. So this story was in the Press Enterprise, but maybe somebody will be watching one of our episodes here of Shickshinny with History with Jimmy, and maybe come up with some other information. So, she said, if we don't try to solve the mystery, our children will never be able to, said Tracy, who recently reached out to the Shickshinny Historical Society for help. The shame associated with the event has diminished. Mrs. Mori came to Shickshinny from Frontini in the province of Briserio in Urbino, Italy. Family stories say she was beautiful, educated, and came from an upper middle class family. She and her husband, Corrado Mori, had 3 sons, Alexandro, Rolando, and Marcello, according to the U.S. Census. But the marriage was not a happy one. By the time of her murder, the couple hadn't lived together since 1931, according to the Press Enterprise at the time. Her oldest son, Alexander, told police he had last seen his mother on the platform of the Pennsylvania Railroad Station in Mocanaqua, headed for New York City. The family wasn't worried when she didn't return immediately, since she was apparently in the habit of routinely leaving home for a few days. She had not been reported as missing because of that. So when her body was found floating in the river on February 18, 1932, it took time for police to figure out who she was. Delbert Howard and Roscoe Sweppenheiser, both of Nescopeck, had noticed what looked like a bundle of rags as they walked across the bridge into Berwick. The Press Enterprise reported this. Sweppenheiser helped Berwick Chief of Police Bruce Lanning fish out what turned to be a frozen body of a woman less than 100 yards from the shore of Bernesco Park in Nescopeck. The newspaper described the victim as middle-aged, about 145 pounds, 5 feet 6 tall. She wore a dark dress, black coat with a fur collar, and had a string of pearls around her neck. She had no identification and was missing her left shoe and left stocking. Coroner William Ross had the body removed to Sheriff Funeral Home pending identification and further investigation, according to the paper in February 19th edition. On the 20th, the Berwick Enterprise reported the description of the body had been sent to police departments and the state police. Families of the other two missing women, one from Plains and one from Harrisburg, came to see the body, but no one could identify her. The next day, the body's missing shoe and stocking, as well as a glove and a man's handkerchief, was found on the shore of the river in a barren spot between Nescopeck and Walpole by Charles Lewis and Anthony Malucci, both of Berwick. They were fishing. On February 22nd, one day before she was to be buried as Jane Doe, police finally got a break. Two of her children, Roland and Emmanuel, 116, 113, went to the funeral home and recognized her mother, the Scranton Republican reporter. Her estranged husband, a supervisor in the mine, learned of her death that afternoon at work. The paper described him as being overcome with grief. That evening, he was taken in for questioning. He was held for 2 days until he was released to see his wife buried in an unmarked grave at St. Mary's Cemetery, and that is between Glen Line and Mocanaqua. The Evening News reported Mrs. Moroli's brother, Arnaldo Poetti of Shickshinny, was also interviewed by police. He had gone missing about the same time Mrs. Mori was last seen and only returning the morning of her funeral. So he was another person that was questioned. The Wilkes-Barre Time Leader stated that Mrs. Mori had a number of male acquaintances that would likely be questioned by police. But despite repeated interviews of Mrs. Mori's family, friends, and associates, no one was ever charged. Stories abound, rumors flourished. One story holds that 4 men got off the train from New York City about the time that she disappeared and may have kidnapped her before she got on the train. The men disappeared shortly afterwards. Another tale claims Mrs. Mori was romantically involved in the head of the local mafia and may have been tortured before death for information about affairs. But a reporter found it impossible to get those stories on the record. And at the time, residents would only say it was not safe to talk about what happened. Secrecy was also the rule in the families of Mrs. Mori's children and grandchildren. Her sons, Alexander's wife, learned about the story from neighbors. And Alexander and Angela, the children of her son Alexander, said they found out the mystery by accident. A comment from a childhood friend led Angela to ask mother about the murder, but she was told to never say anything about that again. It wasn't until after Alexander passed away in 1972 that his children were shocked to hear the story of their grandmother's life and her murder. Since then, Alexander and Angela have tried to piece this tragic story together. Genealogical websites and online references and materials have helped. Both brother and sister have traveled to the grandmother's hometown and talked to local distant relatives. They have learned over the years that the grandmother frequently traveled back to Italy on trips rumored to be paid by the local mafia. She was also visited Wilkes-Barre and New York City often. So with the help of the Historical Society, Jim Bach, Chandler Holmes, and Frank Avina, they were able to find out some more details about the grandmother's life and death, but they also hit the same stone wall police hit 85 years ago. So who killed Mrs. Mori? I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But if there's somebody out there that has information on this, please contact us so we can try to help the Mori family put this to rest. This is Jimmy Bach, along with producer Chandler Holmes, signing off on episode 20. And again, thank you for watching. Don't forget, click the subscribe and like button. Thank you again.